So to begin the transmission cooler and transmission cooler line installation process, what we'll do is we'll start at the transmission with the hard lines. See, basically the way that they'll route is this way. If you were to look at the transmission here, so basically line up with ports like this with the longer one extending towards the back. What we'll do is set the front one in, and then you would tighten this down. And again, this is the transmission case that has the clear anodized fitting, so that's a 3/4 inch wrench to hold that fitting, and then an 11/16 to tighten this one down. You'll set this one in as well in the rear port here. Same thing, 3/4 inch fitting to hold the fitting on the transmission steady. Then you'll thread the line onto it using the 11/16 wrench to tighten it down. And then you'll notice flexible lines here on the hoses. There's one that's quite a bit shorter than the other one by maybe about a foot or so. That one is going to be the one that goes to the rear line, the rear hard line of the transmission, and then once it runs up to the front of the car, it will then thread into the upper port of the transmission cooler. So what we would do is start snaking that through the chassis, and then take our rear line, start to thread that on. The fitting that's on the hard line is a 5/8 wrench. Then this fitting on the flexible hose is going to be an 11/16, so you would tighten that one down. And what you'll do is you'll repeat the process for the longer line as well. You'll tie it into the line coming out of the transmission. Then you'll route the flexible lines across the X of the engine cradle into the center point of the X, and eventually once we get everything positioned, we'll zip tie it to the X here on the top side of it, so that we're away from the exhaust, as well as away from any debris or rocks or anything that may hit from underneath. So again, routing along the top of the X into the center, then around the front end of the X, then moving forward, we would then route the hose back right under where we previously routed the AC lines along this tube here. So the hose will route along this tube, which you can see here. It will continue through the center here on the inside edge of where we routed our power steering hose, and then mount to the other side of this tube here, kind of on the lower half of the tube, but on the inside of it. So it'll route along this face here. It'll go up that portion of the tube, route underneath this line here, route underneath the AC line, come out through here. I'll go grab the transmission cooler. Then the transmission cooler, as you see here, is going to mount. It's unidirectional, so it doesn't matter. What we're going to do is make sure that the port sides, we'll eventually take these stickers off, and then it will mount using one of each of these brackets. You can see there's a flange here on this edge, that will be down, and then there's a flange here on the inside that will eventually mount to the headlight mounting plate. So what we would do is bolt the transmission cooler to these brackets. It will bolt there in that position with a 1/4-20, and then our hoses will come up and mate to these fittings. There'll be a 45-degree fitting that will thread into this port here on the cooler. Then that first line will come up, the shorter line that we routed will come up, thread into this portion of the transmission cooler. The longer line, which will come from the front line of the front hard line off the transmission cooler, will route down here along the side of the transmission, and then into the transmission coolers. And we'll go into more detail on exactly how to locate the fittings inside the cooler and to bolt on the transmission cooler in the next step.